When Hanli learned of Mu Peilin's demise, his reaction was appropriate. After many years, Hanli successfully advanced to the nascent soul stage in the fallen demon valley of Tianan. Back then, after he left Lu Yun's sect with Nengongwan and the others, they used the ancient teleportation array to settle in the Chaos Heart Sea. Now that Hanli had reached nascent soul, he was overjoyed. He immediately left Jimagu and headed to Chaos Heart Sea, finding Nengongwen and her disciples all safe and sound. The sect members had even established a considerable power base in Chaos Heart Sea, directly controlling dozens of cultivation islands of various sizes nearby. Hanli had no particular opinion about this. Wearing an expression of uncertainty, Nengongwan and her disciples, upon seeing Hanli, who had achieved nascent soul cultivation, naturally were extremely delighted. They celebrated heartily. At this time, Nengongwen, with the aid of the large quantity of pills he gifted her, had long advanced to late-stage cultivation. She was diligently training, striving to reach late-stage completion as soon as possible, to also make a breakthrough. That time was indeed exceptionally gifted. After hundreds of years passed, the nascent soul condensation succeeded, which greatly pleased Hanli. But during this period, an unfortunate event also occurred. Many years ago, Mu Peilin, due to approaching a critical breakthrough, hastily tried to overcome a bottleneck. But during seclusion, a moment of distraction appeared, allowing the heart demon to invade, resulting in her cultivation power plummeting and her death. Upon hearing this news, Hanli was stunned, feeling somewhat saddened. This woman's breakthrough history. He had also gifted her Juk forest, along with medicinal pills and bamboo forest herbs. But at that time she still couldn't condense the nascent soul. It could only be said to be fate. As his nominal concubine, Hanli personally went to pay respects to her. Afterwards, Hanli stayed on the island, accompanying Nengongwan for over 10 years, before leaving the island again, returning to Tianan to continue cultivation. Before leaving, Hanli took Nengongwan back to Tianan with him, sending her to the far west, to strengthen the leader of the Thousand Bamboo sect, thus inheriting some of the Great God Lord's legacy. He had long heard about the Great God Lord from Hanli. Naturally, he had no objections. Once transported to Tianan, he bid farewell to Hanli and went alone to Jixi. With his current cultivation, taking over a mere Thousand Bamboo sect was naturally an easy task. Hanli said he had no worries about this, and upon returning to Fallen Demon Valley, Hanli immediately began cultivation in the Transformation Spirit Stage, because he obtained Lin Yaoyi's secretary's elasticity from Fengshi. He brought those spirit medicines that originally couldn't be transplanted from the ring space, all outside the ring space. In this way, the previously raw material limited Jiangyun pills that couldn't be refined could finally be refined without restrictions. Although Jiangyun pills are a 7th grade primordial pill, their medicinal properties are too overpowering. They also greatly assist the Transformation Spirit Stage. Thus, with this unlimited supply of ingredients, the early Transformation Spirit Stage, which should have been extremely difficult to cultivate, Hanli instead cultivated very quickly. After more than 100 years of hard cultivation, he surged to the peak of the early stage in one go, refining the last layer of Qingyu and Ju, achieving the Great Perfection realm. Afterward, taking Jiangyun pills again had no effect whatsoever. Moreover, because the human realm's heavenly energy is thin, advancing to the mid-transformation spirit stage was almost impossible. Guor unhesitatingly emerged from seclusion, and during his seclusion cultivation, during the period when the original compassionate divine light broke through the bottleneck of transformation into a deity, he had previously made multiple contacts through Wanli Fu and Shengji Li with the transformation deity level monsters of the Great Jin, multiple times, gradually revealing the vague, unreleased information he had kept for himself back then, bit by bit to the other party. As a result, they launched an attack here. After a series of arduous pursuits, they truly, allowing them to find a usable spatial node. This caused all those old monsters to launch a massive assault on the past. After Hanli received the news, naturally, he did the same. After preparing for more than 100 years, Xiangjili sealed the old monsters and guarded the old demons. Following the old monsters, joined forces to enter the spatial node. But soon, the three left their original spirit lamps in the human realm. Of the 2 lamps below, only the original spirit lamp of Ulamo was still lit, but it was also dimming. A few days later, the old demon's original spirit lamp also went out. It is unknown whether the old demon had successfully ascended to the Zero realm, thus cutting off spirit sensing, or had perished inside the node. After Hanli learned this news from the disciples of the three, he naturally felt uneasy. Seeing the danger of the spatial node, It was within his expectations. With the divine powers of the three from Xiangji Li, almost the entire force was wiped out. This made him uneasy. It seems that the vague warning about the danger level of the spatial node back then was not exaggerated in the slightest. Indeed, it is a path of life or death survival. Fortunately, Xiangji Li was quite skilled. He had already reserved the location of the spatial node for him. No need to worry about not finding it. Now that he can no longer make any progress in cultivation, he must personally check the entrance of that spatial node first, to prepare early. After all, the more thorough the preparation, the greater the chance of passing through this node. Just from one lift's description, he is not at all reassured. However, the spatial node is not located in the Great Realm, nor in familiar places like Tianan. Instead, it is in an unfamiliar sea area called Wulong Sea. This place is also known in the Great Realm, but Xiangzhili and other Huanshan prisoners control a teleportation town that leads directly to this sea area. He must first go to Dying to successfully use the teleportation. This round trip will take quite some time. Before leaving, he must first return to Lungsing Sea once. With that decided in his heart, Han Li continued to have people operate the puppets to guard the interstitial space, while she herself drifted away. On a picturesque small island in Jimugu, several cultivators of the Yuanying level were gathered in a poetry pavilion on a small hill, smiling and chatting about something. Fairy Bai, I heard you refined a new batch of fragrant pills this time. These are top-grade pills for surprise water. I wonder if Little Second could get a few from you. An elderly man with a white beard, wearing a loose gray robe, twisted his beard and said to the woman sitting opposite him, a green mountain-clad woman, smiling as she spoke, Brother Han, you flatter me. Everyone knows that you yourself are skilled in pill refining. How could you be interested in just a few new fragrant pills from Fairy Bai? But as for me, June, this time, I want to exchange some of these pills for my disciples. The refined-looking female cultivator opposite had not yet replied, when another middle-aged scholar in a blue robe interrupted with a clear laugh. Zhao Dao, you are mistaken. Most of the pills I am skilled at are those that promote cultivation, and several kinds of elixirs that enhance magical power. I really cannot refine the new fragrant pills, now that there is a rare opportunity. Of course I won't miss it. The old man did not get angry. Instead, he smiled warmly and replied, there is no need for you to compete. This time, I came to participate in the exchange, and have brought more than half of the new fragrant pills. Enough for both of you to have some. I hope the things you bring to exchange will not disappoint me. The Green Mountain woman spoke softly and gently. Unlike a typical cultivator, looks like a refined young lady. But the old man and the scholar, upon hearing this, both breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did they start speaking politely. These few cultivators are actually holding a small exchange meeting here. The other two sitting silently in the stone pavilion couldn't help but exchange a smile. Then one of the pale-faced burly men suddenly raised his hand, placed a golden wooden box on the stone table, and pushed it to the center. He stared at the old man seriously and said, this item was obtained through the joint efforts of Fan Mao and Brother Sun, to exchange for those two Huaxiao pills from Han Shang. Only this single item can allow my Gale Rampage to evolve into a complete transformation. Complete transformation. Didn't I say during the last exchange that this item is not for trade? My arm scale snake also needs this item. The old man frowned and shook his head repeatedly. He chuckled and said, brother, no need to answer so quickly. Let's first take a look at what I have brought out. Fan, the cultivator, let out a low laugh, confidently saying, brother, unless you have a material like Kingling, no matter how precious the other items are, I won't agree to the trade. The old man was moved inwardly, but outwardly showed no sign of yielding. Yet his hand already made a gesture, directly shooting the box into his hand. Then he opened the lid. A bright blue, thumb-sized round bead appeared inside. Thunder Essence Beast Core. Upon seeing this item, the old man suddenly exclaimed. The others were also startled, all momentarily forgetting the past. Han Shang truly is knowledgeable, recognizing this item at a glance. This is indeed the demon core of a level 7 Thunder Essence Beast. Although only a level 7 demon beast, this beast is rare, as all fellow cultivators should know. Brother Sun and I chased it for 3 days and nights, before finally obtaining it, using this item for exchange. I wonder what you think, friend. Fan said this confidently. The old man looked at the box in his hand, not blinking an eye, clearly craving this demon core intensely. But those Huajiao pills also have their uses. He was momentarily uncertain. The Thunder Essence Beast demon core is indeed quite rare. May I have a look? Just then, A faint male voice suddenly came from outside the courtyard, unfamiliar and urgent. Who are you, few? All have forgotten the Book of Changes. All have forgotten it with them. At an unknown time, a man in a blue robe appeared outside the pavilion, only about 20 years old. His face was ordinary, but his eyes were unusually clear. The cultivators inside the stone pavilion could not help but exchange glances. None of them recognized this person, and although this place seemed ordinary, it should have been concealed by arranged restrictions. So, how could a stranger appear here? What stopped them from immediately getting angry was that when the man glanced over, he looked like a mortal without a trace of magical power. But if he really was a mortal, how could he appear here, saying such things? Sir, you are. The general cultivator seemed to be the owner of this place. Hesitated for a moment, then cautiously asked, Nothing much. I just came to ask for directions. If I have disturbed you, I hope you cultivators won't take offense. The young man cupped his fists in thanks. His expression was calm. He was naturally Han Li, who had come through the main path, and this was a certain sea area of Wulong Sea. Han Li needed to inquire about this unfamiliar place, and tried to buy a sea chart. Although the illusion restriction here was extraordinary, it couldn't fool his clear insight. So, when passing over this island, he saw a gathering of high-level cultivators, and hurriedly landed to ask for directions. The general cultivator was stunned, then showed an expression of misfortune. If you cultivator have a nearby sea chart, that would be even better. By the way, although your Thunder Beast demon pill looks intact, the demon power inside has mostly dissipated. Even using it for medicine won't be very effective. Han Li didn't care what the other thought. Instead, he glanced at the box in the elder's hand. Smiling, he said, This is true. What nonsense are you talking about? The elder heard this. His heart was uneasy, but the general cultivator suddenly changed expression and became angry. Believe it or not, it's up to you cultivators. I was just speaking casually. However, if any cultivator is willing to sell a sea chart to me and answer a few questions, I also have a Thunder Essence Slim Waist pill to give as a gift. Although it's a bit low grade, it's still enough for refining medicine, Han Li said calmly. He flipped his palm. A similar shaped waist pill appeared, also glowing blue brightly. A waist pill with a similar appearance materialized, also shining with blue light, but clearly about one size smaller than the one previously taken out. The few Wulonghai cultivators in the pavilion first showed a wave of disgust, then their expressions changed in various ways. Some had a gleam of light flashing in their eyes, some showed an expression of disbelief, and others stared fixedly at Han Li, as if trying to read something from her face. Sir, are you really suitable to come from such a background? Or are you deliberately here to toy with us? Fan Din, the cultivator, shifted his gaze away from Han Li's waist talisman, suddenly spoke with a sarcastic tone, playing tricks. All for a crooked 6th level waist pill. Han Li raised an eyebrow, revealing a half-smile, half-smirk expression. HMPH. If it were an ordinary level 6 waist talisman, none of us would even take it seriously, but a rare and refined waist talisman is a different story. Moreover, since you appeared, and immediately questioned the quality of Fanzhong's talisman, it's understandable that people would be cautious. The Sun cultivator, who had remained silent all along, was an elderly man with a slightly gloomy face. At this moment, he spoke coldly. You delayed killing the Thunder Beast for quite some time, didn't you? Because of that beast exhausted the large portion of its demon power inside the demon pill over such a long time. After you killed it, the demon pill couldn't replenish its power. How could its quality remain good? It seems the two of you who killed the high-level demons are few in number. Otherwise, you wouldn't be unaware of such taboos. Han Li chuckled softly, and said casually, I wonder if that's really the case. Upon hearing this, the two Fin cultivators exchanged a glance, and couldn't help but show hesitation on their faces. Even if the demon pill story is true, how did you get into this place? Fan Dao, you clearly used illusions to conceal this area. Did you come here specifically to confront us? The elderly commoner suddenly asked with caution. A mere small town. I don't even put it in my eyes. As for you all, this is my first time in this sea region, and I'm not here specifically to target you. Han said, I'm in a good mood today, so I've said everything that needs to be said. I'm not interested in answering any more questions. The conditions I mentioned earlier remain unchanged. Is there anyone willing to make this deal? I have no intention of staying here any longer. Han Li's face hardened as she finished speaking. Seeing Han Li's tone like this, the few cultivators in the Great Stone Pavilion actually felt more uneasy inside. The other party looked so mysterious. They didn't think the other was bluffing. For a moment, out of caution, no one dared to speak up, until the delicate Green Mountain woman, out of sudden caution, No one dared to speak up at that moment, until the delicate Green Mountain woman, gazed at Hanli Yihua with flickering eyes, suddenly asked a question, hearing a breath. It seemed not to be from any of us Wulonghai cultivators, but I wonder if you are from dying. Do you know Senior Xiang Jili? You recognize that Taoist Hanli is staring intently at this woman. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he seemed quite surprised. Senior Xiang once lived on the young lady's island. For a period of time, in cultivation, he only guided me a little, which benefited this junior greatly. You address Senior Xiang as an equal. Could you also be one of the senior cultivators who transformed the divine artifact? The Green Mountain woman, upon hearing Hanli's words, her eyes flashed with a different color. She silently stood up. Even Ren Yilide spoke. His expression became extremely respectful. The 7 transformed cultivators, who were originally sitting calmly, were all startled greatly. They all stood up in shock as well. The previously rude generic cultivator, and that old Yin calendar elder, showed a trace of panic on their faces. Since you recognize me, I have nothing to hide. When did you meet Taoist Xiang? Hanli ignored the other's movements. Instead, he furrowed his brows and asked the woman. This junior met Senior Xiang over 200 years ago. Back then, I had not yet successfully condensed my primordial sound. If it weren't for Senior Xiang's guidance, I might still be struggling now. 7 beats to strike Qingchu. The woman's face showed joy as she recalled 200 years ago, calculating the formal greeting to Xiang and others, at the time of discovering the spatial node in Wulongxi. It seems this matter is indeed true. Hanli's mind raced quickly. In an instant, he judged the woman's words to be true. His expression softened. Since you know Taoist Xiang, that's excellent. Take this belt. Bring me the sea chart. Hanli raised his hand. The thin belt in his hand immediately shot toward the woman. The woman was pleased in her heart. She held out her hands and absorbed the worn belt into her palm. Then she bent forward and supported herself. After that, from the storage pouch at her waist, she took out a pale green jade token and lightly handed it over. Hanli took the jade token, immediately scanned it with divine perception, comparing it with the information left by Xiang Jili before. In an instant, he found the exact location of the spatial node. Not too far from here. It seemed possible to arrive quickly if given enough time. He nodded with satisfaction. Not bad. Now I have a few questions. Listen carefully. Once your identity as a transformed divine cultivator is revealed, Hanli's body slightly trembled. He ordered in an unquestionable tone, let's talk about it. Now he is already the highest level existence in the human realm. If it weren't for concerns about the depletion of his lifespan, there would be nothing in this world that he fears. Naturally, the Jade Mountain woman quickly agreed. Down below, Hanli's lips moved continuously, but not a single sound was emitted. Meanwhile, the Green Mountain woman's beautiful eyes flickered with flowing light, and the voice transmitted from Hanli's mouth was heard. She also responded to these questions one by one through voice transmission. After listening, Tanli stroked his chin and bowed his head in deep thought. The other cultivators dared not even breathe heavily, all obediently standing still in their places, afraid of disturbing this senior before his transformation into a deity, and causing themselves huge trouble. Heh. Han here has obtained what he wanted, so I won't stay here any longer. You all continue. Hanli seemed to have figured something out. Suddenly raising her hand, smiling with a heh, she said, then flicked her elegant robe. A clear light flashed, and suddenly she disappeared without a trace, vanished without a shadow. How Hanli left, no one present could figure out. However, with that, since Hanli revealed her identity, the group of cultivators with the surname Fan who had been eagerly standing by, finally breathed a sigh of relief. But, as their gaze swept around, the Thunder Gold Beast demon pill in the Green Mountain woman's hand made them show envy again. Just by producing a sea chart and answering a few words, she was able to obtain a Thunder Crystal Slim Waist pill. That kind of luck was a bit too good. The Green Mountain woman noticed the gazes of several people, sweeping toward the item in her hand, calmly tucked the pill away, then smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, since Senior Han has already left, let's continue our discussion. The matter of exchanging with the fairy is not urgent. I didn't expect the fairy to have once associated with a transformation deity cultivator. Truly an oversight and a grave mistake. The scholar sighed deeply, and was the first to speak with a faint bitter smile. That was a matter from many years ago. I was just a mere tribulation cultivator back then, and did not dare to claim any sort of association. It was merely that Senior casually pointed out a few things to me. The Green Mountain woman shook her head, smiling as she replied, even if it was just casual guidance, having a connection with the transformation deity cultivator is something many people dream of, but it is a bit strange. Why have all these highest level existences Come to our Wulong Sea. Could something major have happened in the Murphy Sea? The cultivators first showed envy, then furrowed their brows and looked somewhat surprised. This really might be possible, but since it's a divine transformation cultivator planning to intervene, it's not something we can get involved in. One careless move could easily get crushed in the blink of an eye. It's best not to inquire recklessly, in case we anger the divine transformation cultivator. The white-bearded elder chuckled darkly, a lingering warning from the divine transformation cultivator. As soon as he said this, the others' expressions slightly changed. All nodded in agreement and watched carefully. As for what they truly thought in their hearts, only heaven knows. While these Wulong Sea cultivators quietly speculated about their mission, he had already transformed into a streak of blue and red light, appearing on the sea surface thousands of miles away. Through questioning the Green Mountain woman, he learned the general situation of Wulong Sea. Up to now, there are no divine transformation cultivators in this sea area. Therefore, he discarded the last bit of doubt in his heart and headed straight toward the direction of the spatial node. With Han Li's current cultivation level advancing into divine transformation, if he truly exerted full power to shield himself, his speed would naturally be unbelievably fast, but doing so might trigger the primordial energy of heaven and earth, causing the slowly depleting source energy to drain faster. So Han Li only maintained a normal pace, willing to spend more time traveling. After more than a month, ignoring everything along the way, he arrived at a vast sea of mist. Gazing at the endless whiteness before him, Han Li barely moved his brow, and without hesitation, entered the mist on his light-speed flight. After flying in the sea fog for over half an hour, suddenly Han Li's light-speed flight halted. He actually stopped. He looked around anxiously, rubbed his hands together, and simultaneously uttered a breaking word. Two thick golden beams flashed and shot out, striking the void. A thunderous roar followed. The nearby sea fog twisted and changed, then dispersed and faded away. In the blink of an eye, a vast open area several miles wide was revealed. Below, a small island was faintly visible. It seemed to have a small cluster of buildings on it. Seeing this scene, a look of joy appeared on his face. He spoke with difficulty to hide happiness. It seems the old freak and others don't have blood ties. They really left disciples here to guard this spatial node. But if I had arrived a couple hundred years later, it's uncertain if anyone would still be here. Just as he was reflecting, just as he was interacting with it, 3 streaks of escaping light flew out from the small island below, heading straight toward Han Li. As if they had detected his presence, Han Li's expression remained unchanged. Her hands were clasped behind her back, floating motionless in the air. Ding Wang's face showed a difficult choice ahead. 3 middle-aged cultivators, all at the foundation establishment stage. After their gazes swept over Han Li's face, they immediately showed delight and stepped forward to greet her one by one. Greetings, Senior Han. We juniors have been waiting here for a long time under the orders of our ancestral master. You are disciples of Xiong Dao Yuman. We have met before. We have met before, Han Li asked without changing her expression. Indeed, we are disciples of the Patriarch. We have portraits of Senior Han left by the Patriarch. So, we recognize you, Senior. One of them said respectfully. Thank you for your hard work all these years. I certainly will not treat you unfairly. However, from now on I will have my disciples replace you in guarding this place. You no longer need to be trapped here all the time. Han Li nodded, showing a slight smile as she spoke. Hearing this, all 3 were very happy. They then invited Han Li to sit inside the building below. But Han Li shook her head, clearly stating she wanted to first inspect the location of the spatial node. Naturally, the 3 dared not refuse. They immediately agreed, leading Han Li toward one side of the island, having flown just over 10 miles. Without the 3 needing to say much, Han Li's divine sense scanned the unusual phenomena in the sky ahead. His divine sense suddenly sharpened and accelerated a fewfold. Her divine sense suddenly sharpened and accelerated. During the flight, the group's light-speed movement finally stopped. Han Li narrowed her eyes slightly, silver ears, unblinking, staring at a grayish, huge glowing orb in the sky. She involuntarily took a cold breath. The orb was round, with a diameter as large as several li. Although somewhat blurry and dim, upon closer look it seemed unfathomably deep, and the radiance it emitted slowly rotated, giving a strange feeling as if it could absorb one's mind and soul entirely. This was the spatial node. Although she knew there was no mistake, Han Li still exhaled clearly before asking, Senior, is this the node where the Lost Ones entered? To maintain the stability of this entrance, the Lost Ones spent great effort to set up a special seal, temporarily sealing it. This not only keeps the node as stable as possible, but also reduces spatial fluctuations to the minimum, so as not to attract the attention of other cultivators in Wulong Sea. the middle-aged female cultivator among the three said, but when he mentioned Xiangdao sect, his expression darkened with sorrow. Obviously, these three were also very clear about the matter of the personnel's spirit lamp going out in the acquaintance group. So that's how it is. I was wondering why the spatial fluctuations here were so weak. I truly appreciate the efforts of you and your comrades. Han Li unexpectedly let out a light sigh. Then he gazed steadily at the glowing orb in the air. His eyes flickered, but he remained silent. However, the three disciples who had just witnessed this exchanged glances with each other, as if conveying some unspoken message. There is something I, a junior, wish to inform the senior about. One of the southern disciples hesitated for a moment, then suddenly spoke up. What is it? You look somewhat surprised, casting a glance at the person. It's like this. The three of us have been guarding this place for over 2 centuries, and although there is a seal placed by the physiognomy group, this spatial entrance has experienced brief disturbances starting from 100 years ago, and as time has passed, the intervals between these disturbances have been getting shorter. At first, it was once every few years, each lasting only a day, but now it happens once a year, and each time it lasts for half a month. The male disciple's return revealed such information. You mean to say, the seal can no longer maintain this node's entrance? You asked with a slight change in expression. I'm afraid that's the case. If this trend continues, in at most another 100 years, even if this spatial node doesn't collapse, it will become extremely unstable, and I'm afraid the senior won't be able to enter it as easily as those who slipped in before. Another disciple respectfully explained, 100 years is such a short time. Your expression darkened somewhat. This is only our speculation. Perhaps we have misinterpreted the situation. The disciple hurriedly added with a forced smile, is the guess that if I stay here for a few years, I will understand it better. I was just planning to study this node carefully. I won't be leaving anytime soon. Han Li's eyes brightened for a moment. Then he slowly spoke. The three disciples from the acquaintance group naturally said nothing to oppose. They quickly pledged their loyalty. Then Han Li waved his hand, signaling the three to return to the small island first. He himself intended to stay alone for a while longer. In the blink of an eye, under the huge glowing orb, only Han Li remained. He raised his hand, looking at the massive orb in the air. His expression was unsettled. Clearly, the words of the three just now. He raised his hand, looking at the huge glowing sphere in the sky. His expression was unsettled. Obviously, the words of those three just now made him somewhat worried. If what those three said was true, that the entrance could only be maintained for just over 100 years, then he must enter this node within a century. In terms of time, it's a bit too rushed. The risk of falling is undoubtedly increased. But if he doesn't seize this opportunity, even if he still has over 1,000 years of support, it's probably hard to find any other means to enter the critical point. Otherwise, how could people like Jilly and Old Wine Monster have endured until now? Once they find a node, they enter without hesitation. As for the node information that he hasn't handed over to Shang Jilly and others, only a few remain. He doesn't hold much hope that any of these remaining places would still have a usable space node. Meanwhile, on the other side, a stern-faced powerful figure, under this massive light sphere, stayed for more than half a day, then suddenly turned and flew backward. As soon as the sudden light reached above that small island, it slowly descended. The three men and women who had been decorating had already prepared the largest pavilion for Han lighting, and tittied it up, allowing this senior Han to settle in. Han Li was extremely satisfied with their performance. Plus, with the three guarding this space node, they had earned their merit through hard work if not achievements. He immediately gave each three treasures and upright bottle pills. Naturally, these three decorators who took the order were overjoyed and deeply grateful. Finally, Han Li used the 10,000-mile talisman to directly contact Nangong Wan and others far away in Luangsing Sea, instructing them to send several newly recruited reliable decorators from the island, who had been refined with pills, and specifically requested Tiakiner to come along. Currently, Tiakiner has spent most of her time on various orthodox methods, because her cultivation was aided by his pills, focusing on research into orthodox prohibitions, and her innate talent for orthodox methods was already remarkable. Now with so much time, her achievements are naturally extraordinary. In terms of orthodox methods, she even far surpasses Han Li by a great margin. For this trip to enter the space node, he probably really needs to rely on her formation skills. In the following time, Han Li almost daily went to the massive light sphere to observe changes at the node entrance, then returned to the island to work hard, to think and plan. After a year, Tiakiner arrived on the island with 4 decorators from the island. Finally reaching the island, Tiakiner accompanied by 4 raider cultivators from the island. Finally arrived on the island, Han Li immediately allowed the original 3 Jiten cultivators on the island to leave, letting his own subordinates take over everything here. Although Tiaki Anner was still lingering in the late Jiten stage, but after taking a bottle of oxygen water specially left by Han Li, it's still too early for Yeshu to arrive at the original county. As for whether she can still condense in the future, that depends on her own fate. Han and I immediately took Chakiner and arrived, quickly bringing along her children, and first went to inspect that spatial node, to see if there was a way to strengthen the seal's power, so they could buy more time. Unfortunately, although Chakainer's cultivation had reached an incredible realm, when facing the spatial node, an existence involving spatial power, after months of hard thinking, she could only come up with a method to gradually strengthen the seal. But whether this method could truly prevent the collapse of the death portal, she only had about a 20 to 30% confidence. Although the odds weren't high, with no other options, they had no choice but to let her proceed. As for arranging the formation, some rare materials were needed, and Han Li's divine abilities naturally guided them to leave Wo-Hai for a trip, where they collected everything at Wulongxi. And so, Han Li stayed in this area for about 5 or 6 years. During this time, he made a significant discovery in his heart. The spatial node here was indeed, as the gatekeeper said, experiencing tremors every several years. But the intervals between tremors were getting shorter each year, and the duration of the tremors was gradually decreasing, while the intensity was increasing. Because of this, Han Li's original joy from advancing to the divine transformation stage naturally vanished. Watching Tiakiner, he arranged an extremely complex formation, adding a layer of seal to the spatial node. Then he began to consider whether to take this opportunity to scour the human realm, searching everywhere for special protective treasures and secret manuals, to prepare for entering the spatial node. But just a few days before he planned to set out, suddenly a spiritual light flashed from a certain direction beyond the mist sea. A glowing orb appeared, then shot toward the mist sea. In the blink of an eye, it reached the edge of the mist sea. The light dimmed, revealing a stunningly elegant silver-haired woman, about 20 years old, but with a sharp nose. Her eyes shone brightly, silver hair flowing endlessly. She glanced over the depths of the mist sea, flipped her palm, and instantly summoned a sword. After sweeping the area, a faint smile appeared on her jade-like face. The spatial node that the few young disciples from the demon sect mentioned was indeed here. Suri murmured a few words. Surprisingly, she also knew about the existence of spatial nodes. Then, without hesitation, she moved her body, once again transforming into a glowing streak as she fled. After a roll of sea mist, this woman completely disappeared into the fog without a trace. The current misty sea island is no longer like when Han Li first arrived. Without any precautions at all, Tiachen, while setting up seals for the outer spatial nodes, Jin Crossing arranged several extremely mysterious magic arrays near the island. Lua Wiley, enough to temporarily trap a Yuanying cultivator. This Silver Mountain woman, without hesitation, naturally plunged into these static arrays above the island. Once triggered, numerous spatial fire barriers appeared indifferently nearby. They rained down on her head relentlessly. Then dense wind blades and ice spikes followed one after another. The Silver Mountain woman was startled. But then, with a cold snort and a stern expression, she raised one hand. Instantly, a white, chilly wind surged upward from her body and rapidly expanded in volume. In the blink of an eye, it swept through the surroundings, forming an incredibly fierce storm circle. With an astonishing momentum, a rumbling sound echoed loudly in the air. Wherever the hurricane passed, all attacks were drawn in, then shredded to pieces. They were completely ineffective, proving the Silver Mountain woman was unfazed at all. Such a commotion, naturally, could not have gone unnoticed by the 4 assistants' cultivations. Up to this moment, they immediately transformed into beams of light, shooting rapidly into the sky. The Silver Mountain woman in the hurricane, upon seeing people flying out from the island, suddenly felt a trace of killing intent. She raised her jade hand, pointing her fingers at these 4 cultivators, as if intending to flick something at them. But at that moment, suddenly, a faint tearful voice sounded in her ear. Feng Xianzi, please show mercy. These few are Han's subordinates. They are just following orders. Western King Taoist, please don't blame them. Upon hearing this, the Silver Mountain woman's expression changed drastically, but she slowly lowered her raised palm. How are you here? You've also advanced to an incarnation. The Silver Mountain woman was naturally the former coastal lord. You have also advanced to the transformation stage. The Silver Mountain woman was naturally the former coastal lord of that region. Actually, the woman transformed from being Feng. At this moment, the woman's face looked somewhat unpleasant.